Cool you reached out. How long have you been part of the CIA? No, I'm just kidding.
Like 15 years.
The following video does not glorify drug use, but instead it intends to promote harm reduction by discouraging the ignorant use of specific drugs, as well as harm elimination by discouraging certain people from using specific drugs altogether. There is no right or wrong way to consume these substances, but there are unsafe and safer ways, and what's more comfortable for one person may be more dangerous for another. Before watching this video, please understand that psychedelic experiences may not be entirely predictable, but that doesn't mean that bad trips and good trips are random. Rather, it means psychedelic experiences are influenced by factors such as the individual's given setting, and dosage at that specific point in their life. Therefore, you will not experience what these people have experienced, but you could potentially experience something similar. However, these are random people, so please do not make decisions based on what they say without your own due diligence. And also, take note, once again, that these substances affect everyone differently, especially those with pre-existing mental conditions.
What was your first impression of psychedelics before you ever considered tripping?
I was really interested in them, just because, like, I got really heavily involved in the electronic music scene when I was, like, 13. One of my best friends at the time was really into it, and he kinda turned me on to the whole thing. I ended up making my own music and DJing, and getting involved in that scene pretty young, and obviously in that scene, psychedelic use and, like, that kind of culture is pretty prominent. So I kind of got really interested in that. Without even trying them, I was just already interested in like psychedelic art and that kind of headspace was already something I was turned on to.
Did your first trip on any psychedelic stand out or impact you in any way?
Yeah, my first psychedelic experience was with well, all right, my first psychedelic experience, and I might get shit for this, but it was the second time I smoked weed. I would consider that a psychedelic experience just because I had like these thoughts of going back into past lives, and like my closed-eyed visuals were super intricate and psychedelic, and who knows if it was laced or anything like that, but I had my first uses with marijuana were actually pretty psychedelic for me. I think that kind of opened the gateway into me wanting to try psychedelics. But my actual first, like, with a traditional psychedelic was LSD. I think I went into it with a bunch of expectations because I was not only already being getting an impression from like all the psychedelic art and music I was listening to, but also like from my friends and like peers that had tripped, they had all these experiences, and so I kind of went into it thinking I was going to have those exact experiences. And when it wasn't like that for me, I think that ended up it was really disorienting and actually kind of scary for me because I had a sense of like, oh, I don't know how to handle this because I don't know what this space is. And I think I spent a lot of time trying to fight it instead of actually embracing the experience itself. So like the most I got out of that maybe was in the visuals, the fractal patterns and things transforming in front of me in people's faces, getting all melty and creepy and things like that. That's pretty much what stuck out. But then I didn't really have any like introspective thoughts other than like I was really self-conscious about myself and the way I looked during that trip too. I remember that being a huge thing with it. And it was also the first time I did it was at a party too, with a whole bunch of people that I didn't know and a lot of loud music and lights and yeah, the first time I had a really bad time and ended up having to like I kept having these weird thought loops of like I need to be alone, and I'd go into a room like by myself and I'd sit there, and then all of a sudden I'd freak out at the fact that I was alone, so I needed to be around people, and then like it would just like it kept alternating between being overwhelmed by there being people and then there not being people. Yeah, and so it was like I'd get this feeling of like loneliness and like, oh man, I'm stuck alone in my thoughts. I need to go like be around people and distract myself. And then I'd go and I'd try to talk or I'd be around people, and that would just be overwhelming and overstimulating to me. So I'd go back to wanting to be alone, and cycle would just go over and over again.
Yeah, and as a 16-year-old at a party, that's a damn.
Yeah, I mean, if I had like a time machine, or if I had a way to go back and tell myself to wait until I was ready, I would have. But given that I felt pressured, not in the sense that my peers were like honestly like you have to do this type of thing. It was just that like I was involved in the electronic music scene and all that shit, and so it was just like I felt like I'm not getting it as much as these other people are getting it. once I came back, I was all, or once I like came down, I was thankful to have not be tripping anymore, and kind of just like was like, yeah, I guess that's maybe not for me, and didn't do it for a while. Just stuck to weed. I guess I'll start with my first mushroom trip. Was also not a great experience. I don't know how much I took. My roommate had some at the time and just kind of gave some to everybody and said to eat it, and so we did. I If I had to guess, it was probably around a gram and a half, 2 grams maybe. Um, and this was when I was 18 years old, just fresh moved out of my parents' house, moved into my apartment with some roommates and some friends, and uh, and my girlfriend at the time and had moved back from Arizona to after I'd moved out, moved back up to Minnesota to live with me, so she was living there as well. And I remember we ate the mushrooms, and my roommate who gave it to us told me to basically, like, he's like, just like distract yourself for a while, like don't think about the come up, because it's just like if you sit and focus on it or whatever, you won't feel it. You gotta like just try to do other things and it'll come on naturally. So I like tried to watch a show, play some video games, but honestly, I just couldn't stop thinking about the fact that I ate mushrooms and I'm gonna start tripping, and I've never tripped before, and that was literally all I could think about, no matter how hard I tried. It got to a point where I started to feel weird and tingly, and I remember colors were a lot more bright and edges were sharper. It was like I could like see in 20. It was like I put glasses on for the first time. It was wild. But I also had this really, like, this sense of dread, this sense of anxiety, and it was just really just in the pit of my stomach, and it started to turn into full blown nausea. And I went into the bathroom, and I puked, and I puked so hard. I mean, I just was violently throwing up into the toilet. And I remember each time that I threw up, I like got projected into the trip, like deeper into the trip. So every time I threw up, I'd like come back up and start breathing like heavy, because as you do when you throw up, and um, like the whole room would shift and expand and then shrink, and I felt really small, and then I felt really big, and I felt like claustrophobic. And after I like finally was able to stop throwing up, the nausea went away. I went into my bedroom and I got into my bed and like curled up in the fetal position and like put my arms around my knees, and I just laid there kind of like just rocking back and forth while my girlfriend at the time came and just like tried to calm me down as best as she could and just like tell me everything was going to be okay. And I finally got just something in me told me I needed to like get up and move. Like I was doing more damage by sitting there and in the fetal position. And so I walked out into the living room, and they were playing some Grateful Dead music. Obviously, I'm wearing the shirt too. But they were playing some Grateful Dead music, and it was just, I can't even remember the song or anything. I just remember it was this really beautiful jam. And I sat down on the couch and just kind of like spread out, and the whole trip took a 180. And like all of a sudden, like I didn't even know what anxiety even was. I just like was kind of like just melting in the spot where I was, and closing my eyes and seeing all these just beautiful dancing colors as the music played. And the trip wore off really fast. Like all of a sudden I kind of just was fine. Like I still felt weird, but not, I wouldn't necessarily say I was tripping. I was just kind of buzzed. But everyone else was still just full into the trip. So I'm not sure. I wonder if like me throwing up or whatever had something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe.
And then I did after that I did mushrooms. I did like a gram of mushrooms with a buddy like a year later. Um, and that one was probably that was where I ended up actually that was the most introspective, I think, a trip as uh I had, or my first like real thought-provoking trip, where I actually started to think about what consciousness is, and where like I was really fixated on where is consciousness located in the body. So I'm like, is it in the brain, or is it like a product of the brain? I was just really like just like tripping about the fact that I'm like, okay, I'm me, but like, where am I located in my body? Like, I don't know if that really makes sense, but that kind of triggered this whole ponderance of what consciousness really is and what the human experience actually means, because it's such a it's just a bizarre thing. I remember getting really focused on language too, and like how insane language is. The fact that we are, that I'm making mouth and throat noises to you, and you're understanding those mouth and throat noises, and then like responding in other mouth and throat noises, and then I understand what those mean, and we're able to like convey information, and not even just like convey information, but learn new things. Like those mouth and throat noises can actually teach me something that I didn't know before. That whole concept just blew my mind, and I was so focused on it. Like, we were trying to watch some cartoons, and I didn't even know what was going on in the cartoon because I was just so focused about how weird talking is. Like, this is just like I didn't even know what the plot or anything was to anything we were watching. I was just like, what is talking? What is language? And then the fact that there are other languages and they evolve from other languages, and it just it totally blew like my mind. And I, even after the trip, I just kept like thinking about different concepts like technology and just music, pretty much anything that human beings do that like we create is just, it was so mind-blowing to me. Even after the trip, I was just like, the fact that we came from a single cell to now we're building helicopters, like it just blew my mind in a way that it hadn't before. I guess I'd never really thought about it like that.